Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this fourth hour. This is Tuesday, October 20th, 2015, and I'm David Knight. We're going to go over some news, and there's a lot of news that is broken. Of course, one of the most amazing pieces of news, I think, is this Ebola relapse, which we haven't really talked about that much. I covered it last night. We have a clip from the nightly news, Ebola relapse, zombie virus that won't die. That's essentially what's going on with this. There's been a cavalier attitude that we saw when this broke out in the United States with government officials. Don't worry, we know everything about how to control this, and they were very careless in many people's opinions about how they did quarantine, flaunting the fact that they didn't need to do quarantine. We saw a doctor that just said, had said in the past, shut up and take your damn vaccine. Well, that same doctor had been exposed to someone with Ebola, and she and her news crew were supposed to be quarantined, but she violated that quarantine, was seen walking around. So we saw all kinds of cavalier attitudes toward this. Now, here's what's going on with this. We've seen an Ebola relapse of a doctor, British nurse, I should say, Pauline Cafferkey. She was given the all clear back in January of this year. So here we are 9 months later. At the end of last week, she was in critical condition. She almost died. Thankfully, she is now recovering. She's still in serious but guarded condition, I think is the way they term it in the UK. Nevertheless, as The Guardian points out, doctors and scientists are amazed and appalled at the Scottish nurse's relapse. What is the bottom line for all this? Well, the bottom line is that we need to understand that science is never settled. When you hear them say that they don't need your informed consent because they know everything about the new vaccines that have just come on the market, they know about the interaction between all the vaccines, and they know that it isn't going to be a safety issue or an efficacy issue, that is total bunk. It's total bunk. How many times in the history of science have we seen what that was conventional wisdom completely overturned as time went along? Whether it's the orbits of the planets or whatever, we see this coming out. There's a consensus, and everybody is demonized if they go against that consensus, but that's where you find the breakthroughs. It's the independent thinkers, it's the skeptics. Those are the people that are constantly being shut down, and of course, we have the right to be informed. We have the right to have our consent sought. And so when we look at a situation like this, and let me just, I'm going to go to the callers who've been waiting for a long time. I know Maya in Kansas has been waiting for quite a while. I want to go to you in just a moment, but let me first do this Ebola thing, and then I'll go right to Maya in Kansas, because this is important for everybody to understand. They say when they go through and they give somebody an all clear, they look at things like the blood and the saliva and organs like the liver. They find that they're free of the Ebola virus. But what they have now learned is that there's pockets in the body where the immune system doesn't go after Ebola. And these are places like the brain, the eye, the sexual organs. And so you have a situation that we just saw not too long ago, an American doctor, Ian Crozier. He'd been working in Sierra Leone. He contracted Ebola in September of last year. He was cured, and then they found it in his eye. It changed his eye from blue to green. It was an inflammatory eye disease. It was caused by Ebola. On the same day that we learned about this nurse who was in critical condition, the same journal, New England Journal of Medicine, that had given us the information about Ian Crozier, the doctor that had the eye inflammation, told us that they had found a very well-documented case of sexual transmission. This happened 7 months after a man had been cleared. He transmitted it to his sexual partner. She died from Ebola, and it was the people who were trying to backtrack it, and that's why it took so long. So we were told at first, oh, don't worry, it's 7 weeks, and then people are clear, they won't sexually transmit it. Then we were told it's 7 months. Now they're saying to be safe that it's 9 months. Who knows, really? They're saying that it can hide out in a lot of different places. It can hide out in the prostate gland and amniotic fluid and the placenta and breast milk and in the central nervous system, the brain. And they give a story about a couple of monkeys who had a relapse, who had been cured and had a relapse of Ebola. They put those monkeys down, but they said they were very, very seriously ill. So we hope that this works out for this nurse who appears to be recovering. But of course, it brings up the issue of the entire Ebola outbreak. There are thousands of people who are pronounced cured, and yet we don't know how they're still harboring the Ebola virus and if that can break out yet again. So as we talk about that, let's take Maya's call. Maya in Kansas, you had a question about prepping for the collapse and relocation. I'm sure you wanted to ask Joel Scows on that, and I'm not sure if I can help you on it, but go ahead and ask your question or give us your comment.
Well, actually, what I'd like to do is switch, if I may, based on what you've just spoken about, because I ran a healthcare organization for 10 years. And the organization I ran was called the Viral Hepatitis HIV Outreach. And so I know, I guess the best way I can say this is straight out. We've been lied to the whole time about this, because,
Yes.
and it has nothing to do with Ebola. It's about viruses, okay? Hepatitis is a virus. HIV is a virus. If you talk to any doctor or nurse for more than 10 minutes about viruses, they will tell you that they don't just disappear. That's why shingles is here. Even when one of the things that we know now is that when you treat someone for viral hepatitis or HIV, you don't really destroy the virus. What you do is you clear the virus from the person's body, but there is still residue there. And so when you're talking about these things hiding in different areas, the eye, the brain, this is common knowledge. So I know for a fact that there were people who listened as the CDC said, we've taken care of it, the person can go home. There are medical personnel I know who saw that and said what I'm pretty much saying now, BS.
That's very true, and a good point when you're talking about things like herpes and things like shingles. And the key thing here, which I think is every bit as frightening as the Ebola virus itself, is just how we were lied to and manipulated by the government, by the CDC especially.
Absolutely. Now think, and I've actually worked with different people within the CDC in order to put on these conferences. So I'm not a medical person. I'm a healthcare educator, which kind of gives me an edge because I get to hear all of this and I get to take it and explain it to other people. So the whole idea of Ebola just disappearing from the body is ridiculous. Think about a man wearing a gray hat. You go over there and you go over there to treat that man wearing the gray hat. But guess what? The moment you administer whatever it is to treat, the hat changes colors. It mutates. It becomes different. And that's what the real fight with viruses is all about, trying to catch it before it mutates. Now, if you take a look at what HIV and hepatitis will do, imagine where Ebola could be hiding.
Well, and certainly we've already seen the many careless releases, the many malfunctions that they've had at CDC laboratories. We had the situation at Tulane University at their National Primate Center where they had a disease that they had brought in to weaponize, because that's what our government is doing. When they lied to us about this, and when we know that they have a program where they bring in deadly diseases to make them more deadly, to make them more easily transmissible, and when we see all of the accidents, whether they're real accidents or whether it's something that they plan to do, that are happening with the Pentagon, with the CDC, at the Primate Center in Tulane, where they let out Burkholderia pseudomallei, a disease that got out of the biosafety level 3 lab. That's what really should concern us. So we have a government that not only lies to us, but is weaponizing diseases. That's my biggest concern about this. And that was what we were concerned about when we saw this cavalier attitude surrounding Ebola. But of course, we've seen that cavalier attitude at the CDC's own biosafety labs.
When you also consider this, and I don't know this for a fact, but this is how you need to think about it. When you see a number of different viruses or accidents taking place throughout the United States, like there were vials found in old buildings that had been filled with poison or a substance. I can't remember what it was. Last year, they had found it in a box in an abandoned building. You've got to start asking yourself, what is going on that 3 and 4 different kinds of viruses and or bacteria are being exposed in the environment? Okay,
yes.
3 or 4 different. How do they intermingle? is there a threat if these two should get together? There may not be nothing to what I just said, but you have to admit it's kind of weird that we're dealing with MRSA, we're dealing with Ebola. I'm predicting that we're going to get hit with a virus in the future that we thought was gone a long time ago. We keep seeing smallpox being reintroduced into conversations and dialogue.
Yes.
And it's time, that people start recognizing that. And as a prepper, someone who's trying to prep, I would say that if you do understand what's going on, you should be taking care of yourself now.
Yes.
Do your doctor,
Yes.
do your dentist, do your optometrist, do all of these people, because by next year, you're not going to be able to get in without filling out a lot of information, and you're going to have to start questioning the equipment and the tools that these people are using right now.
Absolutely.
Viral hepatitis was one where hepatitis C and hepatitis B, people were saying, how do you get that? Well, guess what? Very easily. It's a blood transference. And if you imagine the head of a pin, the hepatitis C virus is smaller than that.
We're out of time, Maya. Yes, very good points that you made. And certainly we have to be just as concerned about what our CDC is doing as Sierra Leone was concerned about what Tulane University was doing in their country. That was the site where Ebola began. And they asked, as you're doing these experiments here, and it begins right here, was it an accident or was it deliberate? They threw them out. We need to do the same thing about these programs. We'll be right back.
And it's that type of behavior that spurred me to do the research to develop a true nutraceutical formula that was designed to smooth out and help children focus. All of our children are hit with modern mind control. Television, music, fast food, GMOs, sugars, you name it. Young humans have not yet developed their nervous system and are being hammered daily by globalist concoctions. It's no wonder they can't focus and calm down, and then are put on dangerous psychotropic drugs. Working with my team, we set out to find the best formula with the highest quality ingredients that children would actually like and take. We worked with the leading manufacturer in nutritional supplements that are safe for children to bring you the most affordable and powerful calming formula out there. Introducing Child Ease with herbs and calming extracts like chamomile and lemon balm and essential nutrients that taste great. Obtain your Child Ease today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's Child Ease exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com.